It's not something I ever thought I'd have to face, not after everything that had happened. When Angela showed up at my door that day, I was stunned. To be honest, I hadn't seen her in years. Not since the divorce. The anger, the hurt, everything I'd felt during our marriage and the months following the split had settled into something cold, like a frozen river running through my veins. I thought that I had finally moved on, that I had found some semblance of peace. I had been doing well with my daughters, focusing on their needs and my job, trying to keep my head above water. The doorbell ringing brought me back to reality. It was late in the afternoon, and I had just gotten home from work. As I opened the door, I froze. There she was, standing there in the doorway, looking nothing like the woman I remembered. Angela had always been full of energy, always the type to keep things light, even when life was falling apart. But this time, she looked different. She was older, of course, but it was more than that. Her face was drawn, like she'd been through something that changed her. Her eyes were red, and her hair, which she'd always kept in perfect order, was a bit disheveled, as if she'd been running her hands through it in frustration. But what really caught me off guard wasn't just her appearance, it was the fact that she was standing there at all. I had cut ties with Angela years ago after the divorce. The decision had been made in the midst of so much pain and anger that I hadn't spared a second thought about trying to reconnect. After everything, I had no desire to rekindle anything with her, not after what she had done. My mind immediately started racing, and a flood of memories came rushing back, but I couldn't let myself get lost in them. I had to stay focused. Angela's presence was unsettling, but I had my daughters to think about, and I couldn't afford to let old emotions take over. I didn't want to say anything that I might regret, but I had a feeling this wasn't going to end well. She looked at me with a mixture of hope and despair, like she wasn't sure whether she was walking into a chance for reconciliation or walking straight into the lion's den. She didn't speak right away, as if waiting for me to invite her in, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The silence stretched out between us, and I could feel my anger rising. How dare she? After everything that had happened, how could she think that I'd just let her back into my life? Finally, Angela spoke. Her voice was quiet, and there was a trembling quality to it, almost as if she was scared of me. She said, "I know we haven't spoken in a long time, but I need your help." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. She needed my help? After everything she'd done? It didn't make sense. I didn't know what kind of help she could possibly need, and frankly, I didn't care. I was about to shut the door in her face right then and there. But before I could, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "I'm getting divorced from Sean. I've been trying to fix things, but I haven't been able to," she said, her voice shaky now, and she wiped away a tear. The mention of Sean, the man she had left me for, hit me with a wave of emotions I wasn't prepared for. Angela had always been impulsive, always chasing the next thrill. She had made her choice when she walked away from me, and I had spent years trying to rebuild my life, trying to give my daughters a sense of normalcy, without the constant chaos that Angela had brought into our home. I wasn't about to let her bring it back. "Why now, Angela?" I asked, my voice cold, the years of bitterness showing. "You left me. You walked away. You signed away your rights as a mother. Why would you think I'd let you back in now?" Her face crumpled, and she let out a soft sob, looking almost desperate. "I know I messed up. I know I can't undo what I did, but please, please, I want to be part of my kids' lives again. I want to make things right. I know I can't ask for forgiveness, but I'm asking you to give me a chance. I'm asking you to let me be there for them." Her words were a slap in the face. She had walked away from her family without a second thought, without ever looking back. Now, she was asking me to open the door again. I didn't even know who she was anymore, and I wasn't about to let her waltz back into my life, and more importantly, into my daughters' lives, just because she'd made a mistake. But then I heard a sound. It was faint at first, but it was unmistakable. A child's voice crying. The sound came from just outside my door, and my heart sank. I hadn't even realized Angela had brought her son with her, but now I could hear him wailing. He was in distress, and Angela's face softened at the sound. She wiped her eyes and whispered, "That's my son. I can't leave him out here alone." My resolve faltered. It was impossible for me to just ignore the situation, not with a child involved. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to just let her in either. I was angry, confused, hurt, but I couldn't stand the thought of leaving a child outside in the cold, crying. I sighed, my frustration growing. "Stay here," I said, stepping back to close the door, but I held it just enough so she wouldn't walk away. I didn't want to deal with this. I didn't want to revisit the pain, the lies, everything Angela had put me through. But I couldn't just shut the door on a child. After a moment, I stepped outside, holding the door open just a crack, so I could see her son. He was standing near the porch, clutching a stuffed animal in his hands, tears streaming down his face. I wasn't about to let him stay out here alone, but at the same time, I had no idea what I was supposed to do with Angela or her son. I can't do this, I muttered, mostly to myself, but Angela must have heard me because she stepped forward, her face filled with desperation. Please, she pleaded, just let me talk to you. I promise I'll leave if you want me to, but I need to explain everything. I didn't know what to do. My mind was clouded with anger, hurt, and confusion, but I also knew that if I didn't at least hear her out, I'd regret it. So, reluctantly, I let her in. I sat on the couch, not knowing what to expect. Angela seemed calmer now that I had invited her in, but I was still on edge, wondering if this was all some elaborate scheme to get back into my life, or worse, back into my daughter's lives. She took a seat across from me and looked at me with a mixture of guilt and hope. I've made so many mistakes, but I'm not the same person I was back then, she said, her voice trembling. I know I abandoned you, and I know I hurt you. But I've been trying to fix everything with Sean, trying to make a family, but I realized something. I'm not going to get another chance with him. And I've already lost so much time with my kids. Her words were like a punch to the gut. I could hear the desperation in her voice, the way she was grasping at anything she could to explain away her mistakes. But none of it made sense. Angela had left, and now, after everything she'd put me through, she wanted me to just accept her back into my life? I can't do this, I said again, more firmly this time, standing up from the couch. I've already moved on. I've already rebuilt everything. And you walked away from your family, but Angela didn't give up. Please, just let me explain to the kids. I know it's been so long, but they deserve to know I'm here. I don't want them to hate me. I want to make it right. As much as I wanted to push her out the door right then and there, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Not when there was a child involved. Not when everything was so complicated. But I knew one thing. I wasn't about to let her just waltz back into my daughter's lives without understanding the full impact of what she was asking. I turned to leave, saying, "Stay here. I'll think about it." But deep down, I knew this wasn't something I could just let go. I had to make sure my daughters were protected, that they weren't going to be hurt again by the woman who had left them without a second thought. Little did I know, Angela's visit would only be the beginning of a much more complicated and painful journey. It's been a few days now, and I can't seem to shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew about my life is just one big lie. Angela's unexpected appearance at my door set off a chain of events that I was not prepared for. At first, I thought I could just ignore it, but that proved to be impossible. Her words, the emotion she stirred up, the presence of her son, it all stayed with me, gnawing at me like an open wound I couldn't quite reach. I wanted to forget, to move on, but that was becoming harder by the day. I tried to push it all away, to convince myself that I had done the right thing by shutting her out. I knew, deep down, that she hadn't earned a second chance. She had abandoned her family once. Why should I let her back into their lives, especially after all the harm she had caused? I had been through so much to rebuild everything after the divorce. My daughters, my job, my sense of peace. And now here was Angela, asking for something that felt like an intrusion, a return to a past that I had worked so hard to leave behind. But as much as I wanted to dismiss her, I couldn't. The phone call from my parents shattered any illusion of peace I had left. It came a few hours after I had gotten home from work, the same day Angela had shown up. I had hoped that after shutting the door on her, the ordeal would be over, but I should have known better. "Why did you turn her away?" My mom's voice echoed through the phone. She didn't wait for me to respond. "Your father and I are disappointed in you. You need to think about the girls. They need their mother." I felt the blood drain from my face.
What was she talking about?
Angela hadn't been a mother to my daughters in years. She had abandoned them willingly. It took everything in me not to snap back at my mother, but I was shaking with anger. My parents had been my biggest support system during the divorce. I owed them everything for the way they stepped up and helped me take care of my daughters when I was barely holding it together myself. They were the ones who made sure that my daughters were safe, loved, and cared for, even when things were so bad I could barely look after myself. And now, they were telling me that I needed to think about the girls and their mother again? I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the crack in it. "I don't know what you're talking about. She's not their mother anymore. She signed her rights away when we got divorced. You don't just get to decide that she's allowed back in just because you think it's what the girls need. I'm the one who decides what's best for them." But my parents wouldn't hear it. They told me that Angela had been in contact with them for some time, asking for another chance. A chance to rebuild the relationship she had destroyed. They said she was getting divorced from Sean, that their marriage was falling apart, and that she was finally seeing the error of her ways. They seemed to think that her desire to reconnect was genuine, that this was a new start for her, and she deserved another shot at being a mother to our daughters. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's been in contact with you? I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. For how long? A month, my father replied. She's been working through some things, and she's finally ready to be part of their lives again. You don't want to deny your daughter's a mother, do you? The words felt like a punch to the stomach. It was as if they were completely disregarding everything I had worked for, everything I had been through to protect my daughters. I didn't want to deny them a mother, but I also didn't want to put them in the path of a woman who had shown time and time again that she wasn't capable of being one. The anger in me flared up again, stronger than before. But this time, it wasn't just directed at Angela. It was at my parents too. You don't get to decide what's best for them, I spat out. You're not their parents. I'm their father, and I've been doing just fine without her. My parents didn't back down. Instead, they argued that it was time I forgave Angela for the sake of the children, that it was the right thing to do. They insisted that my daughters needed a mother, and Angela, whether I liked it or not, was the best candidate to fill that role. They didn't acknowledge the fact that Angela had chosen a man over her family, that she had walked away when my daughters needed her the most. None of that seemed to matter to them. They went on to tell me that they had already given Angela my new address and that she would be coming by to visit.
She's changed, they said.
She deserves a chance to make it right. I couldn't believe it.
How could they be so blind?
How could they think that a few months of phone calls and a failed marriage were enough to erase the damage she had done? You're wrong, I said firmly. You're both wrong.
They didn't see it that way.
Instead, they argued that I was being selfish, that I was holding on to old grudges that were hurting the kids more than anyone. They were relentless. I was shaking with fury, but I didn't want to say something that I would regret. Not when it came to them, not after everything they had done for me during the hardest time in my life. But my blood was boiling. I was being forced into a position I never wanted to be in. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want Angela back in our lives. Yet here I was, being guilted into it by my own parents, the people I had trusted the most. They insisted that Angela had done her due diligence. She was no longer the same woman who had walked away from her children. According to them, she was now a different person, one who wanted to make amends and re-enter my daughters' lives.
You're being too harsh, they said.
The girls need a mother, and Angela is their mother. I hung up on them, overwhelmed by a surge of emotions. How could they have done this? How could they have betrayed me like this? This wasn't their decision to make. It was mine, and they had overstepped. I had trusted them with my daughters, but now I was starting to feel like they had betrayed that trust, and I didn't know how to move forward from that. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to avoid thinking about everything that had happened. I went to work, spent time with my daughters, and tried to keep up the semblance of a normal routine. But the guilt from my parents, the images of Angela crying on my doorstep, and the sound of her son wailing outside, all of it was haunting me. I kept reminding myself that I had made the right decision. I had to protect my daughters. I had to keep them away from Angela, from any potential harm. But the idea of Angela making a comeback, of suddenly trying to play the role of the changed mother, was unsettling. And there was one thing I hadn't expected: the truth about her relationship with my parents. I discovered it almost by accident. It was a week after Angela's visit when I finally started to piece together the truth. Angela wasn't just trying to make amends with me. She had been in contact with my parents for a lot longer than I had thought. What shocked me was that they had been enabling her all along. Apparently, they had kept up a relationship with her after I had cut her out of my life. They hadn't told me. They hadn't shared a single word about it. They had been meeting with Angela in secret. They had also been feeding her information about me, my new life, my address, and my routine. The betrayal stung, but it didn't stop there. They had even allowed Angela to meet with our daughters behind my back. I was livid when I found out. It was like a rug had been pulled out from under me. My parents had been enabling Angela to rebuild the relationship she'd destroyed, without ever telling me, without ever considering how it might affect me or my daughters. They had been lying to my face. They even went as far as to convince my daughters that Angela wasn't their mother anymore, that she was just a friend of theirs. They bribed my daughters with toys, with candy, to keep them quiet about the secret meetings. They had even gotten my daughters to lie to me about it. When I confronted them, they acted as though nothing was wrong. They told me that they had done what was best for the kids, that they couldn't bear to see them without a mother. They said Angela had promised to be better, that she was ready to be part of their lives again. It was all too much. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents, people I had trusted, people I had leaned on, had been lying to me, and worse, they had been manipulating my daughters into complicity. At that moment, I knew what I had to do. I had to protect my daughters from everyone involved, from Angela, from my parents, and from the chaos they were all trying to drag us back into. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I was going to take control. I would fight to keep my daughters safe, to keep them away from the toxic people in our lives, no matter what it took. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit notification bell to stay updated.